But yeah, no, it's one of those old things. It's even like, especially pretty
Welcome everybody to our very first webinar in a series of webinars that are happening every month for the rest of the year, looking at the key principles of what makes a super home. And welcome to everybody in the room who joined us in person for the watch party. So today we're going to, after our webinar, we're going to have an after party where we talk about the secrets of super home professionals and how we can work together, share ideas, and how we can all benefit from the super home movement. And yeah, so I think there'll be a little survey at the start. So that might pop up on your screen shortly. And there's no doubt a few professionals as well as homeowners that have tuned into this webinar. So might be a little bit basic for you guys that already know. And I guess if you're already registered and logging into this webinar, then it's kind of like preaching to the choir because you're already wanting to know about what we're talking about. So the idea of super home movement is to create awareness for everybody and basically transform the industry and have impact so that we're all doing better and exceeding code minimums. And the best way we think to do that is to just openly share ideas freely or cheaply as much as possible and go straight to solutions. And in a way, that's what we've done with our super home 10 principles. So yeah, we're just not seeing the screen at the moment. Oh, that's right. I can just look at the screen, but can we get it on the bigger screen, please? It's not right. Oh, you can see the room? Okay, so you guys we'll work on getting this big screen working, but at the moment we're working off this little one for the meantime. So yeah, I think a lot of it is about mindset and just understanding what we don't know. And I think in some ways people think the building code's where it's at, and that if you build to code, it's going to be safe and it's going to be secure and it's going to be all the good things that you want it to be. But we know that that's a fallacy because building code is well behind the rest of the world and probably a couple of decades behind most other OECD countries. So we might come back to that if we get time later. So today we've got our esteemed guest, Rob from Foley Architecture, who is going to be one of our panelists, and Suzanne Shea from Architecture also. So welcome, guys. And we'll kind of have an open discussion. And if you guys, I know there's some VIPs, some very important participants and partners that are tuning in online. So Simon, Duncan, Dave, others. So feel free to turn your mic on and join in when we're doing our Q&A and panel discussion. So I thought probably the best way to talk about design, or one good way to talk about design, is to look at some case studies. So I'm going to talk about a case study and just one project that's just kicking off at the moment, which is New Zealand's first carbon negative super home, or carbon neutral. Well, it's actually 4 homes, a townhouse development. And Rob's going to talk about his own beautiful home that he built for his family, and that was the super home of the year. Congratulations again, Rob. So people have probably seen that house, but it'd be nice to hear a bit of backstory from Rob about that as well, and the process of creating that, and what was the key drivers in the design of that. So yeah, unfortunately, sustainability is still a niche, and it's still probably less than 5% of homes is talking to councils about building consent applications and what they see. So it's really important that we understand basically building codes don't work. And New Zealand, we have a particularly bad building code, which has got left behind. Other countries update them annually or biannually, and there's continual improvements. So even though we've seen some small updates to the energy efficiency clauses of the building code last year, it's not enough. It's too little, too late, and it's yeah. Can you grab the microphones from over there? I just forgot to plug the microphone in, but probably the laptop mic's working okay anyway. But so yeah, I guess it's probably about 14, 15 years since we saw changes to the building code in regard to things that matter to make a healthy, sustainable, energy efficient home. You know, I think it was 2007, 2008. Even back then, those changes didn't affect what we do. And last year's changes, probably, I would say, you know, maybe the people in the room can raise their hands. It didn't really affect what we do because we already do better than that. So it's too reactive and, oh, cool. Maybe you can hear me better now. I've got a microphone. Cool. So I think I'll just pass this around when you guys want to talk too. So that'll be cool. So just how the Superhome movement works. I'm going to share with you some of the things that we've got happening. And yeah, it looks like we're not going to get that screen working, and the clicker too, it's not working. So can we progress without the clicker? Technical difficulty, sorry. Let's turn it on.
We can use our imagination, Bob.
Yeah. So we're just trying to sort out the tech at this end. Okay, so the clicker's working. Our screen's not working. That doesn't matter for you guys online because you're not seeing the screen anyway. So we'll just battle on, and you're hearing me okay? So yeah. So anyway, yeah, I needed a different view because my notes are on a different split screen. So yeah. Anyway, we'll work without that. Okay, so I've got no notes and I've got no screen. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. All right. So this is what we have to do as Superhomies, work with adversity. Yeah. Anyway, I'll just tell you a little story. I got an email from a lovely couple from Timaru, Rosemary and Miles, and just before Christmas. And they sent me a list of everything they did when building their new house down in Timaru. And they said, we've paid attention to what you've taught. And we have a very nice, quiet, warm, draft-free home. Thank you for promoting Superhomes. People are listening, even when you don't know they are. So they told me they have attended 2 or 3 tours, and they've really just absorbed what we share with the Superhome movement. And so that's really cool. And that's kind of epitomizes what we're trying to achieve with the Superhome movement, you know. And yeah, so I guess in terms of design, the yeses. So the number one thing is the orientation, designing for the sun. And, you know, common sense really, but sometimes common sense is not that common. And still a lot of the time I see homes that aren't orientated correctly, don't have the correct window proportions, etc. So that's where to start, and site-specific design. So instead of thinking about the house first, think about the site and how the sun moves across the site. There's actually quite a few apps, Sun Tracker, Sun Seeker 3D, you can have a look at how the sun moves across the site, and you can think about where you want to situate the home, and specifically where you want to have different rooms. You know, you probably want the kitchen where there's morning sun. You probably don't want bedrooms or the main bedrooms overheating in the late afternoon sun. And probably the next big one is size. Just think about designing something, designing and building space that you use every day. And then by being more efficient in terms of the footprint and the size, you can concentrate on spending money on better quality and performance. So quality, not quantity. And really a part of that also is being spatially aware, but being efficient with the form, so that there's less external surface area, so there's less heat loss. So in that regard, you know, maybe a long, narrow house isn't so good, but it's not always possible depending on the site. So the best would be perhaps a sphere with no windows, but it's difficult to live in a sphere with no windows. So step back from that would be a square. You know, maybe it's 2-story, because then you've got space on top of space. You're not losing heat through the floor. You've got half the amount of roof area and taking up less site. So we need to think about designing and building better and with more density in the city. So, I mean, there's so much to think about with design. I might just try and get back to this presentation. So, sorry, you guys in the room, I can't see this, but just look over my shoulder. So, oh, cool. Yes. So, yeah. So, I've got my notes back, so that's good. Thanks, Freddie. All right. So, thank you to our partners, and especially Christchurch City Council and Queenstown Lakes District Council, who have supported the creation of our new Superhome Design Guide and Super Reno Guide, which I'll talk about a bit later. But everybody involved, because we really appreciate the support that we get, and we can do more events and bigger and better events the more support we get. So thank you very much. And yeah, so just moving on to our 10 principles of what makes a super home. And, you know, we're talking about design today, just to kick off our series. And the design is basically filters through, and it's, you know, it's inherently a part of all of these topics. So thermal performance, I mean, you can read them there. But just flick forward to the next one. There's going to be more webinars. So this is the start. This fills out the year, one a month. But so we've got super windows next on the 23rd of May, super ventilation 4th of July, and then super materials is the next one, 1st of August. Super systems. That's really about all systems and how they work together, and how the home works as a system. So Superhome tours. Most people know about the Superhome tours. It's become a bit of a Christchurch institution, and also starting to filter around other parts of the country. Superhome bus tour is a great day, originally focusing on professionals, and it's a really it's a really educational event where there's some real good kind of connections made, and some really good conversations and good learnings that come from that. The Superhome Summit is something that we've done for the last 2 years, and that's at the end of the year, 5th of December, which is at Superhome HQ, which is where we are now. And then so that's the year. That's really for the public and our industry partners and participants as well. And it's a day where we all get together and really celebrate the year, but also people get a chance to the partners get a chance to address the Superhome community at that event, and it's a lovely event. And then the Superhome of the Year award will be next February, which we had our inaugural Superhome of the Year a month ago, a couple of months ago, which Rob was the winner. And we're gonna ask Rob to share the details about that house shortly. But so there's a couple of other external events that I'll just mention because actually Andrew's in the room, but Kaufman Windows are having that showroom event at their premises on Tuesday 3:30 next week, next Tuesday at 3:30. So you can go out and touch and view their lovely windows and see how they work. And the catering looks amazing in the photo anyway. So Warmth NZ are also having an event on the same day, but later on that evening at the Art Centre, I think at 5:30, along with Moisture Master and Solar Corp, who they all work together. So that's next Tuesday. So I mean, this screen here, it's basically the start. So it's a busy year. There's a lot going on. So but we'll let you know about other things as they come up. There's a few external events like Super Dan, who's lurking in the background there, and myself, Dan Saunders from Dan Saunders Construction. We're going to be doing a keynote address at the New Zealand Certified Builders in Wellington on the 22nd of June. So that's more focused on builders, which I think is important because a lot of the time homeowners will talk to a builder first, or sometimes only talk to a building company. So, and also there, I think we're doing a talk at the Canterbury Property Investors Association too, which is another interesting group to talk to and just share about the sort of financial benefits and the easy wins. And I think the topic for Dan's talk is super versus stupid. Superhome techniques, building details and building techniques, and costs involved and compared to code minimums. So we think they're really kind of stupid. But anyway, so that's happening. I'll just go back to this one here because this is really where the rubber meets the road, these 10 principles, and maybe understand this crossovers and this things that applied throughout these 10 categories. But things like ventilation, you've got an airtightness. If you've got an airtight home, you've got to have ventilation, thermal performance and energy, and like I said, thermal performance and better windows, or even just thermal performance and airtightness. If the home is airtight, it's going to be dramatically more thermally efficient. But as I said, design inherently filters through everything. And I mean, I think we undervalue as a community, we New Zealand, we tend to marginalize design too much. So we a lot of the time jump straight to the building phase and what are the details, how are we going to build it, what sort of windows we're going to have, whatever. When we actually really need to take a step back and understand, like I said, I think at the beginning, understand what we don't know and understand the importance and the value of design. So windows, for example, it's a big topic, and we've got another seminar. Our next seminar is on windows, so that'll be a really great one. We've done them before, a couple of 3 years ago throughout the country. We had 150 people attend here in Christchurch at Christchurch City Council. We had about 80 in Auckland and about the same in Wellington. And right from the beginning of the Superhome movement in 2015, It's our 10-year anniversary next year, by the way. So there must be a big party coming up. But, you know, right from the beginning, we're focused on windows because that's likely, you know, quite often where 50% of the heat is lost because New Zealand has done, frankly, a pretty poor job of windows up until now. And now we're seeing some really big steps to improve windows. And yeah, so basically, I guess, before we even start to think about low E glazing and, you know, and non-conductive frames and, you know, the specs of the windows technically, we need to think about the size and proportions of the windows. And, you know, I've done Homestar assessments years ago where I've looked at a home and just the orientation was wrong. And, you know, I think it was a 10-unit development in Auckland, and they had to upgrade the windows heaps. But if they'd actually designed the place better in the first place, perhaps, well, definitely they wouldn't have needed to do a lot of the things and add a lot of additional cost. So some of the best things to think about with designing super homes, they're actually free. So just get the design right in terms of the orientation, size, and proportion of the windows. Sorry, I'm not drinking beer. That's a kombucha. Anyway, it's a bit dry. But that is also, you know, when you think about windows, just another thing. I mean, I guess the biggest thing with windows is why are we installing windows in the cold cladding cavity? And that, you know, even though they've doubled the R value of windows in the recent H1 changes, then we're still installing them in the cold cladding cavity. So, I mean, I'm sure we're going to unpack this a little bit more in the next webinar. Darren and Andrew sitting at the back there. So, you know, we've still got a super highway of thermal bridging through around the window without even thinking about are we doing better windows or not. Also, overheating is a problem, even in highly rated, high performing homes. We're seeing chronic overheating, like 30 degrees. That's not okay. I mean, I can't handle much more than 23 degrees, but it's just uncomfortable. And, you know, the best time to deal with overheating is before the sun actually hits the glass shading. Correct size eaves. You know, I think, you know, we've seen it's fashionable not to have eaves. But, you know, if you really have to do that, have external blinds. But I would say have eaves all day, every day. But and just to try harder with the design. I think it's just lazy not having eaves. It's lazy architecture. But I think, yeah, it's not always possible to eliminate enough overheating with horizontal shading. So you might have to have shutters or blinds. I know Kaufman Windows have got external blinds that part of their or connect to their windows. There's other people doing external blinds too. These are really common in Europe and just practically unseen in New Zealand. So let's start thinking about these things. Or even simply landscaping, planting a deciduous tree in a key spot so that you've got shade in winter and it loses the leaves and allows the sun to penetrate shade in the summer and it allows the sun to penetrate in the winter. Right. And then they'll sleep. So I think that's probably, I mean, I could talk for ages about design. It's such a big topic. Ventilation, a key time to think about ventilation is the early concept stage, or even when you are thinking about the space planning and how the rooms are laid out on the site. Because if you design a house and you haven't thought about how you're going to get the ductwork through the home and try and do it later, sometimes it doesn't work and that's too late. So the next webinar is on ventilation. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give people easily implementable, cost-effective ways of doing things and sharing details that are actually missing from the building code. How are we going time-wise? Been talking for a wee while now. So what I might do is skip forward. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I really like the idea of people just kind of engaging on the Superhome tours, learning, and just having the knowledge or gaining the knowledge to change the decisions they make around the homes that they're building for themselves. But the way to be really sure that you're de-risking a project and you're not making mistakes, you're not getting a faulty design that overheats or whatever, is get the right people involved. So a super architect, super designer, super builder, you know, everybody involved in the project, make sure that they're all singing from the same song sheet, they're all rowing in the same direction. And a lot of that comes down to attitude and wanting to, knowing why we need to do what we need to do and wanting to achieve better. And it's not always easy, but we're up for the challenge. So I think I've been a bit ambitious with the number of slides, so I'm just going to shoot forward. Obviously, a super home is a sum of many parts. So picking one thing and doing that well isn't going to cut it. You need to think about how everything works together. And not just when I'm talking about systems, and it's more about system thinking. You know, it is about the systems that are included in the building and how they work together, but also how does the building work as a system? You know, how is the window properly connected to the wall without having a huge gap around it? How does the wall connect to the floor so it's airtight and it's thermally efficient? So I think the sad thing is our regulators and actually all of our clever people, the scientists and the experts, a lot of they know we need to be doing better, but it's kind of like, why is it being ignored? And you know, why has the regulations, why has the building code got so far behind? The system is broken and it needs a major rethink. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. So this is why the Superhome movement is so important. We need to do things for ourselves. And yeah, Bucky, you never change things by fighting an existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. That's what we need to do. And just shortly, while I'm kind of on a roll and getting stuck into the building code, this is just a slide that talks about some of the things that are missing and some of the things that are coming. You know, they've doubled the roof insulation, probably unnecessarily, and you know, particularly north of Christchurch. But I mean, that's good. But they've done nothing for walls. They've doubled the windows, but as we've talked about, they haven't thought about properly installing them. So we need to join the dots and think of the whole system instead of tinkering with bits and pieces. There is no requirement for airtightness. There's no requirement for ventilation. Opening the windows, it doesn't work. We'll learn about that in the forthcoming ventilation webinar. There's actually no requirement for heating, except for the new Healthy Home Act, Healthy Home regulations. Well, it's not Healthy Home. That's Healthy Living Room. So there's only a requirement to heat your living room, and your kids can still suffer in a bedroom at single-digit temperatures. So energy modelling is coming. If we get time later, we can talk about that. But carbon calculation is coming. They said 2025. Well, I doubt it, because if people don't know about it now, it won't be coming in 2025. So building for climate change, in theory, it's all good, but I have no doubt at all we're not going to meet the targets. And yeah, I didn't have my notes, but one of the things I was going to mention is, you know, we've got all of these challenges, interconnecting challenges sometimes, you know, climate change, health, you know, our homes a lot of the time don't meet World Health Organization standards, and they're making us sick, and particularly our children who end up in hospital every winter, 30,000 of them, which grows each winter. It's just not okay. But, you know, in terms of climate change, we as architects, designers, we have 196 times the power to create change than anybody else, or ourselves in our own lives and our choices we make, because we're actually having external impact with every day with all the work that we do. So we have a huge responsibility as designers, and I take that very seriously, and I think all designers need to take it more seriously, except for the ones in the room, because we're all on the same page with that. So just one more thing before I hand over to Rob, because oh, my clicker's still working, so that's fine. Have I gone back and somehow it slipped backwards? Did I lean on the button? I got carried away and leant on the button. Sorry about that. Sorry. I thought we might have been a bit slicker than this. It's not my first rodeo, but we'll get there. So we were trying to probably be a bit too high-tech. So QuakeStar. So QuakeStar is an app, which HouseCheck is an app. And QuakeStar is something an idea that I came up with after the Canterbury earthquakes to rate performance of homes. Well, commercial buildings first and then homes. So this is HouseCheck. So a lot of the homes we do 5 stars, so it's 1 to 5, 5 being the best, and then a lot of them are 150 or 200 times code. So, you know, I think most people have actually forgotten about earthquakes, even in Christchurch. It's like been there, done that, moved on. We've had our turn, but an earthquake can happen anytime, anywhere, and you know, Taiwan. Feel sorry for the people there because they've just had a big earthquake. You know, and it's probably not known for earthquakes, but I think, first of all, let's make homes that are earthquake friendly, eco-friendly, but earthquake friendly. Or there's never going to be a home that's quake proof because you don't know how big the earthquake can be, but maybe quake safe is a better way to put it. So this is a tool. You can go to quakestar.org.nz and you can put your house, answer the questions for your home, and you can see how it rates in terms of performance. So even homes that are 200% of current new building strength, they don't cost 200% more to build. Sometimes it's just inherently, you know, if you've got a RAB, external rigid air barrier, or ply or something else around the house, you're getting up to some pretty good bracing values. So another thing that is almost free, it doesn't cost a lot more to think about getting the right amount of bracing wall and getting the windows in the right places to make the house structurally perform better in earthquakes. So you can see how everything's interconnected. There's a lot to think about. And, you know, designers don't have to be experts in everything. We just need to know where to look or who to ask. And that's the key role of a designer. It's kind of like we're the conductors of the orchestra. We're not trying to be maestros and be multi-instrumentalists and be brilliant at everything. We just need to know who to ask. Would you guys agree? You can't, I think it's probably impossible to be an expert in everything.
I talk about it like being a GP. You know a little bit about a lot of things, but you've got to know when to call them, when to refer to a specialist.
Mm. Yeah, not brain surgery. It's not rocket science. Yeah, so we've got our base better best certification, depending on your budget and what you're trying to achieve. We've introduced monitoring, which we're slowly putting monitors into recent superhomes. And I think that's an important part of certification. Actually confirming the building performance over a 12-month period throughout all seasons, and does it actually perform as it was predicted? You know, I think that's really important. And you know, temperature, humidity, CO2. We're working on adding energy to this. It's in the cloud, so we can see in real time what these homes are doing. So, Rob,
All right.
tell us about your beautiful home.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, well, it was a real privilege to win the award for starters. Obviously, there's some amazing other entries in the awards. So yeah, very, very privileged to be selected. So yeah, I think I'll use this as a bit of a case study, but I probably want to go back to basics and talk about some of the things that you want to get in place to enable the best outcomes. You know, you mentioned, Bob, about trying to shoehorn good performance in once the design's already set. And I totally agree. I've seen exactly the same thing where, you know, the design's in place and then you're trying to do what you can, but the further down the track you get, the low-hanging fruit's already gone. The big levers are no longer there to be pulled, and you're left fiddling around the edges. So I want to go back to basics, and a lot of the stuff that I want to talk about applies to all designs. It's kind of design 101. It gets forgotten about a lot of the time, I think, in the rush to just get something designed and built and you know, rush to the pretty concept and the nice renders. But I think it's especially important when you're looking at Superhome or any sort of high performing home, so that you get the right things in place. So it starts with a brief. Ideally, it's the first thing that you do, because that's going to become a touchstone for all the decisions that you make along the way, and it basically sets the parameters for how you're going to achieve what you're going to achieve. And ideally, you involve your designer in helping you set the brief, because a good designer, a super designer, will help prompt you about things that you might not otherwise have thought about, and you just draw out some of those considerations. Your brief wants to be more than just saying, "I want a 4-bedroom house with nice indoor-outdoor flow and great views and sunny living rooms," but be a bit aspirational about it. Yeah, I think keeping the brief as outcome focused rather than features. Try and think about how you're wanting to live, rather than what specific things that you want to incorporate. If there is a feature that you really like it, you know, I love skylights and I want to have some skylights in my home, or I want to have stacking sliders out onto a deck, for example. Why is it that you want those features? Because maybe that feature is not actually in the context of the site. Maybe it's not necessarily the best way to achieve that outcome. So yeah, refining, distilling down to the actual outcomes is quite important. And for us, we boiled everything down to a 2 or 3 word catchphrase for our design. And so that meant that as we went through the process, any decisions, big or small, we just looked at that catchphrase and does it align with that catchphrase, yes or no, and it just really helped us make decisions along the way. Because, you know, this is the second time I've built a house for myself, and it doesn't get any easier. You think it does, but the decisions just mount up again and again and again, and it can just become overwhelming, all the little decisions along the way. So if you can give yourself something to come back to, it just helps you making those decisions along the way, and that just frees the design team to then focus on getting the best outcome, the best performance, rather than getting sort of bogged down in the nitty-gritties. While you're at that brief stage, set a budget, try and make it realistic, and prioritize stuff that you can't retrofit later. Think about things that, maybe we could leave some better joinery or some nicer tapware to later. Maybe we don't need to fit out this ensuite, but we can just create the space for it, and so we can put our initial capital into the insulation and the ventilation systems that you're not going to be able to easily retrofit once the house is built. So normally, on from developing the brief, ideally you'd go on to site selection, but often my clients come to me with the site already in mind. I don't know about you guys, but it's probably similar. And I get that that's the practical reality a lot of the times, and it was for us too. We sort of bought our site on a bit of a spur of the moment, you know, off the back of just going exploring and looking for places that were in our budget, we quickly realised that most of the sites were in the area that we wanted to be in were well out of our budget. We found one that we could afford. We jumped on it, but that obviously came with a bunch of other challenges. But what I'd say with challenges is that they often present opportunities as well. So you don't rule out tricky sites. It's just another thing to build in, and often those considerations can actually throw up some really interesting design responses.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Rob. A tricky site just needs a good designer, and often a tricky site is more cheaper but more expensive to build on, particularly on hills. But probably in terms of selecting a site, what I see sometimes is people overspend on the site. So they might get a site that's larger than it needs to be. And then that leaves them not enough money to create a decent home. So that's, and often, you know, the budget is people's expectations or their perception of the budget is probably about 60 to 80% of what it needs to be.
Yeah.
They don't know what things cost. So they're choosing a site without knowing all of the information about what it's going to take to realise a project.
Yeah, totally. So I think ideally, if you can, involve your designer in that site selection process, because they can help think about some of those things, and they can be a little bit more objective and feed in some of the considerations that site will throw up. Like, yeah, maybe it is bigger than it needs to be for what you're wanting, or hey, we could do this with it so that you don't need all of that space. Typically, the next stage from site selection is concept design, but that's not always necessary either. You could actually go to concept design first. You know, we see quite a bit with tiny homes and things like that, but it does make site selection harder, because then you're trying to find the right site to fit the concept on. But hey, it may be a better way to achieve the drivers, your particular drivers. If you know what you want to do, you haven't found a site yet, start thinking about your brief and then the concept design, and that might inform some of your site selection. But yeah, picking up on what you were saying earlier, Bob, about site analysis, it is quite in depth. It's a skill that is built up over time. And it's not just about slapping some standard prevailing winds and solar, sun studies on, but actually getting on site and seeing, are there any localized situations? Does the wind, in our case, get funneled down this valley from the south? We're actually sheltered from the easterly wind and also from the northwest, so we don't have to worry about it as much as a lot of other sites in Christchurch. And also thinking about things of, are there large trees that are going to create shading, block sun? Is there a particular view that you want to take advantage of? And yeah, I guess with that, getting a site early and spending a bit of time with it allows you to see it in all seasons. So we purchased our site in 2019, needed quite a lot of work done to it in terms of clearing vegetation before we could even think about building on it. But that meant that we got to see it in all seasons, and yeah, start to build up a sense of how we wanted to live on it.
I think that's so important, site-specific design, and a lot of the time that's what's missing with the home building companies. They're trying to fit a plan that someone has already said, I want this plan. How do they shoehorn that into a site? So it's kind of getting the cart before the horse. We may run out of time, so because we're just going to, or maybe we leave the other case study till later, because I think it's important that we have a bit of a Q&A and a bit of a panel discussion and answer a few questions for people. So I want to leave probably 10 minutes for that. So we've probably got another 5 minutes. Is there anything else that's really hot on your mind that you want to cover, Rob?
Probably the main thing is testing the concept design, not jumping straight into the pretty models. And I think people get quite sucked in by flashy renders and nice looking stuff and jump straight to that. But I think just spending a bit more time at that white model stage, testing it. We ran some time lapse sun studies on our design to see where the sun was coming into the house and optimizing the glazing around that. Calculating your thermal performance and considering overheating, things like that, I think are really important at that stage before you leap in.
Yeah, I think that'll become code, who knows when, because it happens so slowly, but that'll just be a requirement soon. But us Superhomies, we're just sort of getting ahead of the game. But I think if, like what you're describing, if it's used at that early design stage, it is a good tool. But what I'm seeing with energy modeling currently, a lot of the time, it's done after the home has been designed for accreditation, for ratings or whatever. And you're absolutely right. Someone might have seen a pretty render and fallen in love with it. It's hard to come back from that. It's hard to say, I'm going to have to take that away because we need to change the design.
That's right.
And a lot of people won't bother. So it's very seldom used at the front end.
Yeah, and there is a lot of work that goes into good thermal modelling. I mean, it's a bit of a garbage in, garbage out scenarios, but the sooner that you can do it and get something there, then you can play around with it. Oh, what if we do change this window?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think this is saying all models are wrong, some are useful. And a lot of the time, the person doing the modelling might be an external consultant rather than who's doing the design concept. So there's this disconnect, and we need to solve that.
Yep.
I'll just quickly introduce this other project, and then we'll open it up for questions. What did I do with my clicker? I'm just so disorientated. Thanks, Rob. Yeah. So I'll just whiz forward, but has anyone been typing in questions, Jasmine?
Not that I could say.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys need to come up with some questions. This project, Nafare Parada, to warm oneself to bask in the sun. Thank you, Ronnie, for the translation. I mean, we started using Google and that was just a no-goer because Tereo has dual meanings a lot of the time. And I think the first thing we thought was we named each of the houses. Carbon negative means, the first house, there's 4 houses in this project, 4 townhouses, sort of semi-detached, one standalone. And the house facing the street is, there's the street, so just, and then there's the site. So yeah, the first house, this one here, so that means carbon negative, and yeah, and then the second house, house B, that's a smaller house, and we thought we googled that and we thought Whare Paku would be good because that came up with small house, but then we later found that no, that's toilet. So thank you, Ryan, for pulling something out that could be really bad. But even to Whare Waro Kino, that was our first one, which means, I think it means evil, corrupt, but not carbon negative. So the Whare Waro Torado, carbon negative house. So I think it's a challenge and it's huge. And Jasmine's been helping with the calculating the carbon, and it's new to us, and we've just basically been bold and audacious and said we're going to do a carbon negative home, and now we're working out how to do it. So that's kind of the way we roll.
Well, you're setting the brick.
Yeah, put the pressure on ourselves. It's what we did with the 10-star home too. So basically the project name designing for orientation is what I said at the start. Where's the sun? And also the fact that we've got 4 homes here separated. The only thing really attaching them is the garages. And so your typical property developer would have 7 homes here and they'd fill up all the gaps between the homes. But we didn't want to have a house that didn't get all day sun. So we wanted these homes to have all day sun because it's actually really important to your well-being and, you know, your mentally, and, you know, you're going to have less stress levels. You're going to have less anxiety if you're in a sunny, light-filled space as opposed to a cave, you know, a tunnel where you have a little bit of light at one end and perhaps at the other end as well, but for most of the day you don't see any sun. So I think that's really important. And the house at the rear is the best one because it's got this big outdoor living space with it's a bigger house. So they're all 3 or 4 bedrooms. And yeah, so this first one is our next demonstration project where we're going to be sharing all of the things we learned about how to make a carbon negative superhome. And we've already learned lots, and it's a lot of work because it really influences the materials you use. And I think we came up with a selection of 10 criteria for materials: aesthetics, carbon emissions, longevity, low maintenance, weather tightness. I mean, that was just one, that last one, but cost, environmental sustainability, low toxicity, recyclable, and actually recyclable, not recyclable, but stuff that does get recycled. Weather text cladding, we found you can mulch it up and put it on the garden. So we changed the cladding that we were looking at using. So hard floorings like timber are carbon negative as opposed to carpet, which is actually really carbon heavy because you need to replace it 2 or 3 times during the life cycle of the building. So the list goes on. There's 10 things here, but you know, I think it all starts with the site, and this site has a 1906 villa, which will be relocated off the site and not sent to landfill. It's already started being renovated. It's got new NK windows in it, but someone's going to pick that up, take that away to North Canterbury and finish renovating it, which is great because we're saving a piece of heritage. We're reducing waste to landfill, which is phenomenal, by the way, the waste to landfill. We're going with this site, we're going for an uplift in biodiversity. So we're trying to create more biodiversity than is currently there, even after the development. So I think I'll wrap this up because there's just some interior renderings. You know, you can see how they're beautiful, sunny, light-filled spaces. That's the end house, which is got a nice double height sort of raised cathedral ceiling for the living space. The smaller homes still have those raised ceilings. So yeah, there's lots of things that I could talk about, which I don't have time to, but just before I open it up for questions, get in touch if you want to be involved. We've already got quite a few people involved in creation of the design guides, and we're making little short videos for inclusion in that because that's going to be an online thing. Don't be shy. And so that's a big project that we're working on right now, the Superhome Design Guide and Super Reno Design Guide. So I'll leave it at that and I'll invite questions from anybody that's got a question. Put your hand up. or question or comment. Okay. Rob, question for Rob. What modelling software did you use for the sun analysis?
Oh, so that was straight out of ArchiCAD. And I think I might have used a plugin called Twin Motion that basically allows us to, if we get the location right, it's got all the files there for solar, and so we can basically run like a video render and through a time lapse rather than your typical video render. You'll set a path and just fly through it at a specific point in time. But so we did the opposite. We just stayed in one place, but then set the time running through. And so we did that at all 4 seasons, and to see how it would work. Pretty quick and easy once you've got the CAD model built. There's a lot of things out there that aren't that hard to do.
Yeah, cool. So we just had to do that for the Nafare Parara project too, but for resource consent. But in that case, it was the council needing to assess any shading on the neighbours, rather than, they probably don't care about each house and how those have access to sunlight, but they care about how it affects the neighbours. And we also had to do an acoustic study too, which is something new, which I've never come across before. So that's something that the council in Christchurch has recently added in. So if you're within 20 metres of a busy road, you need to do an acoustic study. But acoustically, thermally, if you do better with thicker walls and better windows, it's going to be better acoustically anyway. And if you've got a ventilation system, you don't need to open windows. Those are things that they should be thinking about, but they're not. They're just thinking, and also probably the biggest noise there was the very busy popular pub across the road, but that didn't come into it. So there's another question here about stars. We don't use stars. It's just base, better, best. Because we use the KISS principle. We're trying to keep things super simple. And Simon, with your calculation, carbon use modelling, do you mean construction materials, ongoing? Well, both, but we're totally on top of the energy, the operational carbon, because we've been doing that for a couple of decades. But the material side of things is new to us. And so you need to be, that's where we're learning the embodied carbon. And a lot of it is simple, a lot of the discussion, a lot of the talk and webinars has been about calculating carbon, but I've seen very little about how to actually implement low carbon buildings. And one really good thing is just design out waste and create less waste, and that's inherently going to be producing less carbon. It's simple, and I think as super homies, a lot of us super home designers, sorry, homies are people who wear hoodies and sell drugs, but the thing is, we're already doing a lot of the stuff that we need to do to have a low carbon building, and probably without even thinking about it, because it's just what we've been doing, because we're passionate about it. How do you test model design before committing to the build in terms of the thermal performance when there are so many elements to consider? Well, I think the best time to test the design, like Rob was suggesting and talking about that, is at the very beginning. And so using external software is probably not as good, definitely not as good as having it integrated into your CAD program. And we kind of started exploring that 2 decades ago. And at that time it was an add-on for ArchiCAD. Now it's actually part of ArchiCAD, so you can do that. But I actually have never met anyone that uses the energy analysis in ArchiCAD. That would be the best time to do it, rather than what we were saying, like, waiting to the end of the design and getting a certification with PHPP or the Homestar one, which is called the Echo. Both useful tools, but sadly, a lot of the time they don't get used at the right time.
Yeah, that's my experience. So I use Echo myself, but the earlier the better. And the reason I use Echo is just it's really quick and easy to set up and really easy to play around with different iterations. So you can go, oh, what if we change the wall type to this? What if we change the window from this wall to that wall, or change the spec on the glass, go for a glass with higher solar heat gain or lower solar heat gain, things like that. So you can really start to just try different things out.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Rob, and Suzanne,
Didn't say much.
didn't say much, but I saw you nodding lots and and,
I agree with
I
everything.
think now we're going to progress to the after party, the second stage of our today's proceedings, where we're going to talk about things like the Superhome tours. And I know you've been heavily involved in most of the Superhome tours, and I think you've actually got some clients out of that. So that's really good.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about how, as professionals, we can make good use of Superhome movement and benefit. So if there's anyone who is watching who is a designer or a builder or anyone really involved in the industry, do get involved, because it's the best way to learn about the benefits of being part of the Superhome movement. And perhaps you can join our next after party. And we're going to try and stage after parties around the country, Wellington, Auckland, for future webinars. So I do think it's valuable to have in-person events as well as these webinars, where we can meet and connect and share ideas. We used to do it every month with the Superhome movement, and we kind of got busy, but we're going to return to that, having monthly in-person gatherings. Perhaps we do it at the end of the day instead of the middle of the day, and then we can share an ale and play pool. But a lot of the time when we used to do that, there wasn't a lot of playing pool. It was more a buzz of people talking about what they're doing with their projects. So thank you very much for everybody who joined in. If there are questions that we haven't been able to answer, we will get back to you on the email. And but I think we don't want to let our food get cold, and I think there'll be thirsty, hungry people here. So sorry, we can't share food down the interweb or pour drink into the computer, but you know what to do. Just get involved in the next one. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Right now, Bob.